niece, goddaughter. And many of my friends, I mean my friend Roy, came all the way from Italy. Where are you? Brad, Chris, I hear Rob. They're all going to be on the show. Jesse, all the boys from David, Bart, and Jim. Old, young, really acts like she's 28. My beautiful sister Marianne. Mom, I'd like to start with you first, and we went through a lot. I mean, tell us about where your relationship with me, and we're full of a room of gay men, and they're lovely supporters, and people who were there for them. Tell us what you went through dealing with my being gay, and how you feel about this book that I've written and all that. So.
All I can say about my son, he's been a wonderful son. And when I heard he was gay, I was a little disappointed because I wanted him to have children and have a normal life. But he is what he is, and I love him, but I don't care what his life is. I love him. And I love all you guys.
Girls. 15.
Yeah.
What do you?
I was young.
And you have 2 mics. So.
Yeah, well, moms.
Oh, wait a minute.
Hold on to moms. Okay.
Well, I might say something else.
How did I get the acting
Decided
wrong?
what I wanted to say. Well, go ahead.
What were you getting?
No.
No.
Go.
Well,
I wanted to talk about when I came out to you and
All right,
relationship
15,
with me.
that was 77.
Dance Fever, remember?
I
I know you
Saturday
know. Wait,
Night
what the
Fever
heck
was
is that?
You were out in Saturday. You were in Saturday Night
I was in
Fever.
Saturday Night Fever,
You were
yeah.
a dancer in Saturday Night Fever, so you were really cool with me.
That's right.
And in my book, and guys, I want to talk to you about the book and what you talked about in your relationship. And Chris, I'll never forget the story when your mother found the book, and how long it took for her to accept Brad in your life. And I'd like to know where that is today, and also to the audience to know what was that like for you to go through that process with her. And where she is today, and Brad, all that you went through as well. So.
Right. Yeah, the coming out story. I was, what your sister just said. Rome wasn't built in a day. These things take time.
Yeah.
And I have very Catholic Portuguese parents. My father's been gone for a while, but when I was 19, my mother read a letter that I'd written to someone else, closed in a spiral notebook, put under my bed, and she searched my room, found the letter, and in the letter was acknowledging some relationship I was having with a man, and they confronted me with it and basically said, well, you don't know this, but your father is an alcoholic, and
in the book we talked about that turning point. My mother had died, and Chris had actually asked her to, ask me how I was doing. And in his family, they don't talk about feelings so much. So she was sort of keeping a distance, thinking that would be appropriate. And that was the first real conversation we'd had. And our relationship really grew from there to the point where she always asked, Brad's coming up, right? He's coming. She used to ask Chris not to bring me. Now she's insistent that I come. And we got to this point where we just we have nicknames now for each other, and she's Mom Aruda, and I'm bonus son Brad.
And now Brad cooks the Christmas dinners that he was not invited
That's
to
right.
15 years ago.
Because she's not at this point where she can cook a dinner for 12, so now I'm actually the chef for the Christmas dinner, and sometimes I do Easter dinner too. And
Whole family comes over.
that's right, and we do matzo brie on Easter morning. So it's really, you know, she and I have such a good relationship.
That's so nice.
So
This is what you went through before. And so where is it? So
we work out, and we spend so much time in this family. I feel totally a part of them and the family, and it's really been a very gratifying thing to see this process over the years. Chris and I have been together over 17 years.
Wow.
We've been married 6
that
of
deserves
those
an
years.
applause.
Woo! Yeah.
You know, for his nieces and nephews, we talked about this in the book. They didn't know, they didn't understand why this relationship wasn't discussed. Well, I'm Uncle Brad to all of them. They've never really known anybody else to be in Chris's life in this way, and I'm such a part of their lives and growing up, and you know, that's just been really fantastic.
I want to take this now into a thank you. Yeah, believe me. I'd like to take this into another focus of the book, which is about how gay men communicate with one another, and sometimes how we don't, you know, go after what we want in life because we're so afraid of being rejected as we felt rejected as we were growing up, you know. And that Brad has some wonderful stories in Fire Island that when Chris they thought that, oh, maybe my muscles aren't big enough because they would not talk to one another. They would like huddle in groups. I compare it to girls, teenage girls in cliques in high school. And you saw that, you even participated in that. And I'd like the audience to hear a little bit about, because that's another focus of the book, and that shame that we felt growing up continued in our relationships with each other. And we couldn't be honest with each other because we're so afraid of being rejected, and then of getting rejected. Brad, I'd like you to talk about that.
Well, actually, too, what you're talking about for me was when I was living in LA, and it is definitely for me more prevalent. In Fire Island, that is actually one place where if you're interested in someone, you can be more forward. It's a sort of a vacation destination.
A little lighter.
They're a little more relaxed. They're a little more themselves. But in LA, there's definitely, and I still see this, and we were just back in LA, and it's like there's definitely a presentational aspect of yourself that you put out there, and there's definitely a thing where people are afraid of getting rejected, so they hold back a little bit, and then they end up coming off as unapproachable, and they can be the most attractive men in the world, and then they end up not meeting anyone, and they're just so frustrated, like, I can't believe I didn't meet anybody in this situation.
Yeah, and I remember that, and Chris, you and I'm sure that, I think that even happened with you, even when you met Brad.
Yeah, I mean, it's insecurity.
They talked about how you guys were afraid to, like, with the lunch, the dinners, and all this stuff, and you know, and moving slowly, and
I just remember the day I met Brad. I met him in a gym in LA, the athletic club, which doesn't exist anymore, and but it was a hot gym. What struck me is that he was smiling, because there were a lot of hot guys, but he was the only one smiling.
hot guys don't smile.
Because, and this is actually covered in our interview, is that that's a signal. I think that there's a fear, like, well, if I smile at anyone, what am I really saying? You know, I don't want to put out some wrong signal that I'm after you or something. I'm like, no, you're just smiling. Like, that's attractive. It's confident.
It is.
That's the first thing I saw in Brad was his smile.
And you relate to that as well, about the scowl and about the faces that guys make, thinking they're hot, you know, and it's all based on fear.
Well, I remember a time when this was way before Chris, my boyfriend in LA, and I used to go to Sydney for Gay Mardi Gras.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And the Australians are the most,
Oh, yeah.
they're just the most friendly people
Very.
on earth. So great. And we had been going a number of years, and at some point, people in LA started coming to this, and we were in this great bar in this great, just festive atmosphere, and the LA boys were all in this little clique, and they were just standing there with their arms crossed and the scowls on their face, and they were so pissed off because they weren't meeting anybody. And I was like, guys, these Australians are fantastic. Just,
Oh, yeah.
you
Todd's event where you brush by some guys and they actually like, ugh, made a nasty comment
They tuck their bodies in as if they can get cooties by
by touching you.
because I was in my 50s and they were in there. To me, it was, it was a generational thing. That's what resonated with me when we had a conversation. Because I was running a gym in my 50s, and everybody in the gym
And you're a
was
big
in their 20s and their
bodybuilder.
30s.
I mean, God, you know.
And it was interesting because I don't think that, first of all, I'm really proud that the kids of today that in their 20s and their 30s and their 40s live in a world that is not as uptight as the world I grew up in. And but what I don't understand is a lack of appreciation.
For what you've been through, right?
Because we sort of paved the way.
You did.
I don't want to pat it back.
No,
but
I was
I don't want you to cringe when
I was
look at
marching
you.
on the streets in Albany, you know, going 2, 4, 6, 8, you know, James is straight, 1, 2, 3, 4, we won't take it anymore.